I had worked as a flight attendant for almost 10 years, and I thought I had seen every kind of emergency in the sky. But nothing could prepare me for the terrifying day when both pilots collapsed at 30,000 feet above the mountains. My name is Carol Jensen, and I was working on Flight 227 from Boston to Seattle that cold October morning. The passengers were calm, the weather was clear, and everything felt like a completely normal flight. Captain Daniel Brooks was leading the flight that day, a respected pilot with decades of experience and nerves of steel. Beside him sat First Officer Ryan Cole, a younger pilot who was smart, confident, and always ready to learn. Boarding began smoothly, and families slowly filled the cabin while business travelers checked their phones quietly. That was when I noticed a small girl sitting alone near the middle of the aircraft beside the window. She looked around 11 years old, with a blue backpack resting neatly beside her seat under the window. An unaccompanied minor tag hung from her bag, but unlike most children, she looked completely fearless and calm. I walked over and smiled warmly while checking the passengers before takeoff and preparing for the safety briefing. "Hi, sweetheart. What's your name?" I asked gently, while kneeling beside her seat near row 14. "My name is Lily Carter," she replied softly, while keeping her eyes fixed calmly on the airplane window. She explained she traveled alone often because her father was a commercial pilot based in Seattle. I joked that flying alone at her age sounded braver than most adults I knew on airplanes every day. Lily only smiled politely and thanked me before quietly returning to a thick aviation book in her lap. A few minutes later, the aircraft pushed back from the gate and slowly moved toward the active runway. The captain welcomed everyone over the speakers and promised a smooth flight with beautiful weather all the way. Soon the engines thundered loudly, and the giant Boeing lifted high above Boston into the bright blue sky. Passengers relaxed after takeoff, while my crew prepared drink carts and meal service for the long journey west. About 90 minutes into the flight, I carried lunch trays into the cockpit for both pilots to enjoy. Unfortunately, only one meal option remained, so both men ate the same pasta dish without thinking twice. Half an hour later, the cockpit emergency buzzer suddenly rang with a sharp sound that froze my blood instantly. I rushed forward and opened the cockpit door to find both pilots pale, sweating, and barely able to speak. Captain Brooks held his stomach painfully, while Ryan struggled to stay awake in his seat beside the controls. They complained of dizziness, nausea, and terrible cramps that seemed to worsen every passing second inside the cockpit. I immediately called for medical help while another flight attendant searched the cabin for doctors or trained nurses. A woman named Dr. Emily Harper quickly volunteered and hurried forward with her medical bag and serious expression. After examining the pilots carefully, her face became tense and frighteningly pale under the bright cockpit lights above. She whispered that severe food poisoning had likely struck both pilots at exactly the same dangerous time. "They cannot fly this aircraft anymore," she said quietly while attaching fluids to the nearly unconscious captain immediately. Her words hit me harder than turbulence ever could because suddenly nobody qualified remained to fly the plane. I grabbed the intercom microphone with trembling hands and made an emergency announcement across the silent cabin. "If anyone on board has pilot training, commercial or private, please identify yourself immediately and come forward now." For several terrifying moments nobody moved, and panic slowly began spreading through the frightened passengers around us. Then a businessman finally stood up and admitted he only flew small private planes during weekend vacations. We rushed him into the cockpit, hoping desperately that any experience might somehow save all our lives today. But after seeing the massive controls and complicated instruments, fear completely replaced the confidence in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he admitted honestly, while staring helplessly at the glowing dashboard full of unfamiliar aircraft systems. "I've never flown anything close to this size before, and I don't think I can land it." The cabin suddenly felt colder than ice as reality finally crashed down on all of us at once. 147 passengers were trapped inside a plane with no pilots capable of bringing it safely down. Then a small voice quietly spoke from behind the cockpit doorway, breaking the terrifying silence surrounding everyone there. "I can help fly the plane," the young girl from row 14 said while standing perfectly calm beside me. At first nobody believed her because she looked far too young to even understand basic airplane controls properly. But Lily explained that her father trained airline pilots and had taught her using advanced flight simulators since childhood. She pointed at several instruments and correctly named every single one without even pausing to think about it. The private pilot beside me stared in disbelief as she explained airspeed, altitude, thrust, and autopilot systems perfectly, there was no time left for doubt, because the pilots were fading fast, and the plane needed immediate control. With shaking hands and terrified hearts, we allowed 11-year-old Lily Carter to sit in the captain's seat. Her feet barely reached the pedals, yet her eyes stayed focused calmly on the endless sea of instruments. She contacted air traffic control and explained the emergency with a voice steadier than most adults could manage. The controller sounded shocked after hearing an 11-year-old girl requesting help to land a Boeing aircraft safely, but Lily answered every technical question correctly, proving she truly understood how the airplane systems actually worked. Soon air traffic controllers connected her with her father, Captain Michael Carter, waiting desperately in Seattle for updates. The moment Lily heard his voice, tears filled her eyes while the rest of us silently held our breath. Her father spoke calmly and reminded her about every lesson they practiced together inside flight simulators for years. He told her fear was normal, but courage meant continuing forward even when your hands were shaking badly. Under his guidance, Lily slowly disengaged the autopilot and carefully began descending from 35,000 feet above Wyoming. Every passenger remained silent, while the young girl gently controlled the giant aircraft through the cloudy afternoon skies. Flight attendants moved through the cabin calming crying passengers while emergency vehicles prepared at Seattle Airport below us. Some people prayed quietly while others held strangers' hands, hoping the impossible miracle ahead might somehow become reality. After nearly 30 exhausting minutes, Lily finally guided the aircraft down to 10,000 feet safely and steadily. Air traffic controllers praised her calm focus, while her father carefully explained the next steps for landing preparation. She reduced the speed slowly, lowered the landing gear, and extended the flaps exactly when instructed by radio. The entire aircraft shook loudly during each adjustment, causing frightened passengers to grip their seats in absolute terror. Through the front windshield, the Seattle runway slowly appeared beneath dark clouds and flashing emergency rescue vehicle lights. Lily whispered nervously that she could finally see the ground, though her voice trembled with pure fear inside. Her father encouraged her gently while reminding her that she had already completed these procedures hundreds of times before. He promised he was standing at the airport waiting for her and would not leave until she landed safely. As the plane dropped lower, every passenger moved into brace position, while the cabin filled with silent prayers everywhere. I strapped myself into the jump seat behind Lily and prepared for either a miracle or complete disaster ahead. The wheels slammed against the runway hard, causing the aircraft to bounce dangerously back into the air briefly. People screamed in fear, but Lily fought the controls bravely and forced the plane back onto the runway. The aircraft raced forward too fast while the runway disappeared rapidly beneath us toward the terrifying concrete barrier ahead. Then the private pilot rushed forward, pressing the brakes together with Lily using all his strength to help stop. Just seconds before reaching the end, the plane finally stopped safely, while silence filled the cabin for one moment. Then everyone burst into tears, cheers, applause, and prayers after realizing an 11-year-old girl had saved every life on board. Months later, Lily became famous across the country, but she always insisted she was only doing what she learned. Please subscribe and share our channel. We make amazing stories and inspiring videos especially for you every single day. That night changed everything. Her husband was finally exposed, and the man who thought fear made him powerful lost everything he tried to control. For the first time in years, my sister felt safe again. We learned that silence only protects abusers. Sometimes the people who look broken are just waiting for one person to help them fight back and take their life back. Family isn't just about love, it's about protection. And if you ever see someone suffering in silence, don't ignore it. Because one brave decision can change a life forever.